Hi, I'm James Brookes, and welcome to From the Factory Floor, a conversational podcast about all things startup and tech, brought to you by the folks at thirtieth.tech.
Welcome to episode 30 of From the Factory Floor. As usual, I'm joined by my co-host Ian. Hi, Ian.
Morning, James. How are you?
I'm not so bad. It's not quite as sunny as it has been in Manchester the last couple of days, but it's still relatively warm. And I'm also joined today, and welcome to From the Factory Floor, by Rebecca from Nivohub. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi James. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Just to put Rebecca's nerves at ease, whenever I see Rebecca or talk to Rebecca, and I've known her for about 18 months now with Nivo, I always think of Vic and Bob on Shooting Stars. I used to go, "Oh, read cat, 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 cat." And in my head, I always go, "Rebecca, cat, 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 cat." But as we've never actually met face-to-face yet, I've never been cheeky enough to do that on Zoom calls. So when we do meet, I will refer to you as Rebecca, cat, cat, cat.
I think this podcast always taken a bit of a strange turn. Just waiting for the dove from above to appear now, and then Nuvalu and Iranu. Anyway, it's enough of Shooting Stars. So, Rebecca, would you want to give us literally just a little 2-minute intro to who you are and what you do?
Yes, so I'm the financial controller for Nivo. I've been at Nivo for about 18 months now. I'm really enjoying it. Previously, I'm an accountant, so I trained with KPMG when I left university. I worked in the financial services sector of the audit department. From there, I then moved to AstraZeneca, worked in their group reporting department, financial controller of the balance sheet and cash flow. And then from there, I had a family, and so I took a couple of years off, and then I came back and I decided that I'd run my own business for a little while. And then I decided that it was really difficult, so I went back into accountancy, and I decided that I would like to work with startup businesses, but from an accounting angle. So that's where I am today.
Wow! So you're both a founder in your own right and work for a startup. So, and again, I don't know what it is. We seem to get a lot of accountants on. I don't know if that's Ian's background shining through.
Safety in numbers. I think the reason I wanted to do a podcast with Rebecca is, and the theme really today is kind of joining a startup where you've got an existing team and two co-founders, how you kind of elbow your way into that. And also I think one of the consistent themes, two consistent themes we talked around on the podcast are the value of getting great people in, but also, the financial acumen that you need in a startup. So, I'm going to take a back seat today and let Rebecca do all the talking. Sounds like a thing.
And I guess I guess as a starter for 10, Rebecca, going back to what Ian said, obviously when you joined Matt and Mike and Nivohub, how did you find joining a startup with obviously the two co-founders, as opposed to obviously when you said earlier about sort of your life when you were at KPMG and sort of that thing? How did it work?
Yeah, it's really, really exciting joining the startup. When I joined Nivo, they just completed their first seed raise, and they had this amazing new tech that was going to work in a financial services industry. So it was going to sit between a lender and a customer, and it was going to change the way that the business banks onboarded customers. And there was just a general buzz about the business. We had this whole journey ahead of us. We didn't quite know how we were going to grow it to such a big extent, but you knew that everybody on that team was going to do their best to make the business succeed. So it's really exciting, and we're very much still part of that journey. Compared to KPMG and AstraZeneca, it's obviously a very, very different experience, but I think I learned an enormous amount from working at both of those companies, because they teach you professionalism, they teach you to reach your deadlines and have high standards. And I think then you can apply that to a very small business. And I think with Nivo, I've enjoyed being part of the business and actually being able to see how much I can contribute to the business and actually make a difference. And I think when you're in a really large organisation, you're obviously a much smaller cog. You're doing your best every day, but actually you can't see the visible difference, whereas you can when you work in a startup.
Yeah, some good points there. I think the kind of subtitle, I think, for many startups is making sense of chaos for someone like Rebecca that comes in. And that's not being rude. That's just kind of, reflecting on there's that many jobs to be done, and the focus is on the product, the focus is on customers, that the finances kind of get left in a bit of a trail. But I think bringing in that structure and the process, and to any finance folk listening to it, I think it's a great career move once you've got the background and experience that Rebecca Keke has, to kind of go and apply that, because you really bring a value and perspective to the team. That process and training that I had at PW, you had at KPMG, Rebecca. It's invaluable for a startup. So again, I think from a founder's point of view, from Matt and Mike's perspective, aim high when bringing a finance person in. Really bring a high caliber finance person in, because they make a huge difference to your business and your team.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, that really, because I think when you join as a finance person, you're really brought in by the NEDs or the investors, because they want you to safeguard the investment money. And actually, I think from a founder's point of view, if they had a choice between a salesperson and an accountant, I think they would naturally choose a salesperson, because that person is helping grow the business and it's achieving the founder's dreams. Whereas an accountant can actually be seen as a little bit of a cost of compliance or a support function. Whereas actually, that you're going to add value to that business in many different ways. You're going to increase the bottom line either through looking at gross margin, repricing, looking at the cost base. And you have to prove that. This is one of the initial hurdles, so that you have to get over. You're almost proving your value to the founders in the first stages.
And I think we covered that almost when we spoke with Elliot a couple of weeks ago around a lot of the finance at times, whether it's through sort of lack of skills or sometimes just an unawareness of what needs to be done sometimes, that having that, like Ian said, you always want the best people, and bringing someone only of your caliber, Rebecca, who's got both the acumen and developed through both the corporate world and proper accountancy, but also have that nuanced thinking around starting your own business as a founder. Did you feel that starting your own business and being a founder helped joining a startup and also understanding the culture? So I can imagine there's quite a big change from one to the other.
Definitely. Yes, the business I had was very small, and it was an online retail business. But I think I was just desperate to run a business. I was desperate to be in that space. And actually, my underlying business plan probably wasn't the best in terms of sales, but it really gave me the passion to actually want to work in a startup business. My skill set, obviously, is in accountancy and always has been. And so I could then work with a startup business who had the great business plan and technology that would make a difference, and then and work together.
I think it's a good point. I think me and Rebecca have obviously shared some of our thoughts about our own personal journey. I kind of got out of PW as soon as I could, not because I didn't love it there, but because I had an itch to go and do my own thing and create value. I think if you're a good finance person wants to get commercial experience as soon as possible. And that's another message, I think, to founders is when you bring in a finance person, make sure they've got commercial experience, because they can add so much value to the customer conversations around the commercial aspects of your contracts and things like that. So don't pigeonhole finance as finance in a startup. It has a much broader remit and adds much more value. And I think certainly with Matt and Mike, as you've elbowed your way into the team, they really appreciate the value you can add from a risk and an overall awareness perspective from a business perspective.
Yeah.
So once you joined Nivo and managed to get your way in, just I think for anyone listening who's potentially not as financially minded, what exactly is it that a financial controller actually does within a startup?
Well, when you first join the startup, your role actually changes the longer that you're there. So when you're initially brought in, as we alluded to before, the founders are very much focused on growing the business. So they're invoicing customers, they're incurring some costs, but they're not necessarily creating accounting records or anything like that. So the first job to do actually is to really get down to the detail and create some accounting records, reconcile the bank, reconcile the credit card. And that can take a couple of months, really. But once you've done all of that, then you can build going forward. You then start doing the value add. You then start looking at the business. You start looking at gross margin, where one of the first things we did when I joined is we repriced because the gross margin was too low. You always look at the cost base and make sure it's as low as it can be or as agile as it can be. And then you work with the sales team quite heavily. You're looking at sales processes, defining sales processes, and then reporting on sales performance every week. As well as accounting, you also get involved in other areas such as share schemes for employees, EIS for investors. The role is actually very broad. No 2 days are the same. You might work on something intensively one week and then you'll move on to the following week and it'll be something completely different. And that's the bit that I love about working for a startup. Your role is constantly changing. You're dealing with things that you've never dealt with before. And it's great.
I think there's some good list of things there, Rebecca. I think the internal-external mix makes it a real challenge, and I think that's one of the kind of refreshing things that you've brought. I think you've brought momentum, you've brought focus, you brought discipline, and you brought professionalism from both internal and external perspectives. I think every Friday we have a 11 o'clock Friday coffee catch-up at Nivo, where we look at the sales stats for the week. And I know that Rebecca produces those. I know they'll be spot on. We're kind of looking at the next step of fundraising. We've just done an Innovate UK grant award. So again, having Rebecca around us and as part of that driving it, really working, hands-on, hands in the business. The role of finance, I know it's my trade union, but you can't underestimate the value. And again, I really encourage founders to let go of things that you know you're not good at and let a capable finance commercial person like Rebecca take it forward, because they can really add value and take your startup forward.
Yeah, and I think when you, almost with how you described it, it's almost the role change from almost being that first aid, getting everything back to where it needs to be, because I'd say a lot of things like the bank rec, it's just something that I do at TSF, and I've seen many startups. Just there's a backlog of things that needs to be done to get to a solid founding, to then, like you say, start to mix in and almost just go to business as usual, as much as there is, or business as usual, as much as there is in a startup at least, because as we all know, things can change day to day. And I think it's that mix of a role and where you can really add value, especially as a financial controller or an accountant, to have someone there who can get you to where you need to be, and then, like you say, give the advice. I mean, like you say, looking at the figures and going, actually, we need to look at the pricing.
Definitely.
So it's almost taking that view going forward.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I think as at the moment, we're looking, I think with all startups, you're always looking at cash, you're looking at sales predictability, you're forecasting forward, and it's really, really important.
So it's a different mindset as well. Sorry, James, just a different mindset, because everyone is gung ho to a degree in a startup, and you need that kind of passion, you need that unrelenting energy, and that optimism, but you need a bit of grounded reality and sense checking. And I did say to Rebecca when she joined us, don't expect to win a popularity contest, because often accountants and the finance folk are seen as a bit the naysayers, but they bring a grounded perspective. And then, we talked around on a previous podcast with Elliot around best case, worst case, best business judgment. And I think you need that reality check to bring a line in the sand of what's our break-even position, our pricing's too low, our cash burn's high, while maintaining the momentum and the energy and the growth ambition but kind of that reality. And again, I think what Rebecca's brought to Nivo is an amazing sense of professionalism around the finances, but makes the whole board stop and think. She asks the questions, she adds to our thinking. And again, those two qualities I think you look for in a finance person, that can make sure you're asking the right questions at the right time.
And I guess one of the questions around how do you know you're asking the right questions is almost, I think it's something that's often overlooked in terms of reporting, because I think a lot of founders, they might look at gross sales, or they might look at various different statistics they've got within their remit, but that's not often reconciled against everything else into almost a master view, so to speak. What metrics is it that you look at, Rebecca, when looking at Nivohub to sort of ask the right questions or give guidance around, say, pricing or having a look at the cost base? What are the key ones that, if someone's listening to this and looking for advice, what would you recommend they really get hold of in terms of stats and figures?
Yeah, I think one of the hardest parts of a startup business, I think probably most businesses, is the sales model, is understanding, is developing repeatable, scalable sales model, especially for a SaaS business. So I think that will always be an issue that you always have to come work on and fine tune. And I would say that's the biggest issue that we work on every single day. Also, the other aspects of financial reporting, we also involve SaaS metrics, which are really useful benchmarks for a subscription business. SaaS metrics are KPIs effectively for subscription businesses. We often talk about ARR. That's I think that's the most talked about metric in Nivo, and that's showing our contracts in place in one particular time and how much we expect to earn from those revenues over the next 12 months. And people are really interested in that because it's showing how big the company is and how quickly it's growing. So naturally, that is one metric, and you have to sort of pull the team away and actually look at the whole picture, not just one, which is ARR. But in the early stages of a startup, you also have some metrics such as cost of acquisition and lifetime value, which are actually really difficult to establish in the very early stages because your sales performance is so lumpy. You might have one deal one month, 0 deals the next month, 3 deals the next month. It's actually really hard to use the metrics and get a good picture. Now we're a couple of years into trading, we're now seeing a more consistent sales pattern, so we can start applying SaaS metrics and start tweaking things and understanding where the business is maybe not performing optimally, and then work on that area and improve performance.
Yeah, there's a lot of SaaS metrics, which again I think we have spinning around our head and at the board table. Your point about reporting, James, is spot on. And again, we've got a board pack now, which isn't heavy. It's focused, it's light, but that reporting, the timeliness of it, the focus, the accuracy, the attention to detail. And, there's a great phrase, isn't there? What gets measured gets actioned. And I think, at the start of each board meeting, Rebecca leads us through that, through the board report, and taking us from the kind of the sales metrics to the financial metrics and the metrics that matter. And I think that's been a revelation, I think, in terms of the maturity of the decision making and how the board has worked as a collective to help grow the business, looking at those SaaS metrics. I think it's fair to say, you took a bit of time to get into it, to understand the business dynamics, and equally to kind of take people on that journey with you. But I think the whole point is, don't just take a slew of metrics off the internet, work on the metrics that matter for your business. And I think Rebecca owns that. And so I now know we're driving forward with the right information. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think it's really the right information that's really the key one, because I think a lot of times people can try and look for the figures that almost best prove the case that they want to prove. If they want to show growth, they'll look through all the figures because you can get so many metrics that you can almost prove what you want. It's almost the lies, damn lies, and statistics kind of thing, and you can look for anything. But then it's the underlying sort of principles and the other statistics then go against that feeding the right stuff to the people that matter, like you say, then gets the right actions rather than acting on incorrect information. So, I mean...
Was that your dog, Rebecca?
Yeah.
Fantastic. It's live. Don't worry about it.
So it's all right. We're dog friendly here from the factory floor. So if anything, we don't have enough dogs on. Although if Ian's is around, we can't say the word Siri. I guess Steve Jobs didn't see that one coming. And I guess being in a startup and especially working with the finances, which month to month can be up and down, and there's obviously a lot of stress and a lot of emotion involved. What are the sort of highs and lows that you've had working in a startup as a financial controller?
I think when you join a startup, it's naturally uncertain. You have this tech, there's a market, but you have to grow the business and you don't know how that's going to happen. And I think that uncertainty naturally creates a bit of a high and low effect. So when sales are really high, everyone feels great. They're like, yeah, it's working, the business is growing. But then suddenly if sales slow down 1 month, you start to question, well, what's going on? Why is that happening? And then this can go on for 12 months and you can think up, down. And then all of a sudden you look back and think, oh, last year the business grew 3 times over. Actually, we're doing all the right things. But I think when you're in that moment of time, it can seem very much like a roller coaster up and down. In terms of experience of working of a startup, I've learned so much. I really enjoy my role. I really enjoy the varied experience. I enjoy the fact that I don't know what next week looks like or the following month. There's lots of variation. In terms of what keeps me awake at night, I would say the main things are sales, sales predictability and cash. They're the things that I worry about the most. But really, I don't, we have a good team that all work together, so I don't worry about it that much. I'm confident that we'll get over the challenges that come our way and the opportunities as well.
I think balancing that short-term sort of emotion by, saying obviously a lot of these things you can only look at with hindsight. Like say you see sort of sales have gone up, then down, then up and down. As long as it's almost again looking at the right metrics and the right statistics to say, actually we are generally showing an upwards curve. And to and then because there's just going to be things that swings and roundabouts that happen within a business. And I think looking, like I say, you've got to almost have that helicopter view and looking at things as a whole and then be able to then dive down where there are issues.
Yeah, I think, listen, working in a startup has been romanticised over the last few years. It really has. It isn't for everyone. I think the process of hiring is important, and equally you need to kind of take a view if you want to work in a startup. So I think Rebecca was well prepared in terms of she'd worked through what she wanted at the next stage in her career. And from a finance professional, I think that is important in terms of gathering the experience and what your responsibility is. So I think that I think is just worth mentioning. Don't just jump in because it's I want to work in a startup. It has to be the right thing for you. And then, as we've said, the kind of the value and the structure and the discipline, the process that Rebecca's brought in has really complemented the entrepreneurial flair and the product and the dynamism of the sales team. So I think, no 2 days are different, but one of the challenges is to bring in that routine, to bring in those processes. There's one way of doing things the best way, and that's where we need to get to. And again, a lot of startups don't pay enough attention to that. They carry on doing what I'd call napkin maths, when it seems okay, and then again, we at Nivo were very opportunistic, we were very focused. We had a great value proposition. It was innovation, but the first thing is to get customers over the door, and then kind of work out the pricing, the break even. So we're in a good mix, and I think any business, if you're not considering and thinking about your cash, then you should be. So I think that applies definitely for any business, not just startups.
Although I think when you said napkin maths there, I went back, especially since football's obviously in the papers at the moment with the Euros, about Mike Bassett when he had Benson and Hedges on, wrote the team sheet on that, and then old enough, these two old fellas turned up because he got called up. But let's say I think it's putting a structure in place and understanding. So sort of my very small introduction to finances with TSF and how you have to put the right processes in place, and then, like I say, being able to zoom in on the potential, on the key areas and what matters to the business is really the sort of thing that I've learned and taken away from that experience. So I guess because we're kind of getting towards the back end of the podcast, one of the things that we like to ask is if someone was to sort of look at joining a startup, or they're in a startup with a financial controller, from your experience, Rebecca, what would your sort of key piece of advice be to them around the day-to-day?
I really enjoy working at a startup. I love the fact that we're growing something together. We're a team, and primarily we work as a team, and we're looking to achieve great things. And when that happens, it naturally creates a great high. I think if you want to see the value of your input, work at a startup, because you can see what a tangible difference you make. If you like some variation, definitely. So I would really recommend working at a startup. It's great.
But yeah, I mean, Ian, how about yourself?
Sorry to Jim. For me, I think there are three things I'd say for a startup looking to bring in a finance person. Number one, don't compromise on the quality of the person. And Rebecca has said, if we bring in a salesperson, they'll add to the revenue line, will grow. The mindset of bringing in the right quality and level of experience of a finance person is really important. So don't compromise on the quality. As a founder, then let your finance person do their job. Don't keep control of the finances. Let them do what they're great at. Let go of stuff you're not great at, and it gives you more time to be creative and more time with customers. And then once they've proven themselves to you, just let them wander across the business. Let their experience flow, and let them delve into product, into sales, into HR, into marketing, because finance, someone like Rebecca with that finance experience from KPMG, AstraZeneca, running her own business, has kind of got a bundle of great experience that can add value to the thinking. Don't just pigeonhole them into finance. So let them wander, let them go right across the business, because they'll bring nuggets of information back. They really will.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah, I think Mike has been very good at that. He's just letting me take charge of the finances, and then I'm involved in various aspects of the business now, and it's growing every day. So yeah, it's good. And it keeps your interest. If you don't have those interests, you're ultimately going to get bored. You are there not just to do the finances, you are there to take a much more active role in the business.
Great stuff. Well, I think that just about wraps it up, really. So I guess, Rebecca, if anyone wants to get in touch or want any advice, what's the best way that they can get hold of you?
Just send me an email at rebecca.birt@nivohub.com.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your time today, Rebecca.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Ian.
No problem.
So thank you for listening, and we shall look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I think that just about wraps things up here. If you have any thoughts or questions on anything we've said today, get in touch, whether that be through our Twitter @RealTSF or email at hello@startupfactory.tech, or feel free to drop in for a coffee and a chat. As ever, thanks for listening.